Hallelujah.
He is risen. There's many places that especially thinking about this quarantine and the isolation and the distancing, there's many places that I would love to return to. There's many places I would love not to return to, like the dentist or the DMV. But there's many places that I would love to return to when this isolation and quarantine ends. Here in New Orleans, I can think of a few places that have wonderful food. Of course, New Orleans is synonymous with food. To go to Tal's for some hummus or Stein's for a bagel. I would also love to go to a church and see people in the pews. I'd love to go there. Or I'd love to go back home to see my parents and to know that they are safe and sound and that I can be near them, to embrace them. There's many places I want to go back to return. Go back. Return to Galilee. If the angel didn't make it clear enough that the women and the disciples are to go to Galilee to meet Jesus, guess who clarified it? Jesus himself then tells the women again, "Go tell my disciples to meet me in Galilee." It is, of course, in Galilee where it all began. It's in Galilee where Jesus was and where he left to go be baptized, and then he went back to Galilee after that baptism. It's at Galilee where he called his disciples. And it's at the Sea of Galilee, nonetheless, where he calls his disciples. It's in Galilee where Jesus begins his public ministry. It's where he's teaching and preaching and is present to the people. There in Galilee, Jesus is healing, forgiving, loving, lifting up the poor and the wounded and the despised of our world. There in Galilee. And that's where he wants his disciples to go to. And not so that they can chat and enjoy themselves and shoot the breeze. And not so that they can just visit. Not that they can remember the good old days and revisit the past. Go back to Galilee in order to move forward. In order to move forward. See, at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, the disciples were observers. They were followers, and maybe not even through any fault of their own. It's the experience that they found themselves in as they followed this man, Jesus of Nazareth. But now Jesus is inviting them to go back to Galilee because something has changed. There is good news. The resurrection of Christ changes the disciples. The resurrection of the Christ is shared by the disciples. In his resurrection, they too rise. They are called to now be the ones who lead and heal, to forgive and love, to lift up and embrace the despised and the wounded and the broken of our world. Now the disciples are called into that mission, sent back to Galilee. Each of us are going to be going through the same thing in the next few days and weeks and even months ahead. We will be returning to our Galilee eventually. But here's the thing. I don't want to return to the old Galilee. I don't want to return to smog-filled skies in our worst polluted cities. I don't want to return to a world that neglects our true heroes, teachers and nurses and doctors and the people on the front lines every day. I don't want to return to a world where the hungry have to search for food and the homeless are back out on the streets. I don't want to return to that Galilee. Amen. That's not where I want to go. I want to go where Christ has already gone, to the new Galilee, where Christ is calling us to the new Galilee, where we are changed. And when we go to that Galilee, the fact is, we're going to be wounded still. When we enter that new Galilee and meet Christ there, there still will be people among us, many who are ill, many who are struggling economically. There will be those who have faced a death or faced the death of a loved one who wasn't able to say goodbye to someone they loved. But together, like the disciples, though we may be wounded, in the resurrection we are made whole. Though we may be broken, in the resurrection we are made new. And though we ourselves may be broken or wounded or lost or fearful, in the resurrection we are made strong in the hope and new life of Christ. And so we will have to face our death experiences, our tomb experiences, as we enter into this new Galilee. But we do it as a new you, as a new me, as a renewed church, as a renewed society in the resurrected Christ. We do it as we meet him there, the one who has called us to Galilee. You know, as we go to this new Galilee, to meet our Redeemer who has gone ahead of us, we're no longer going to be these passive observers. We are the ones who will lead and heal. We are the ones who will forgive and lift up the poor and the broken of our world. It will be us, called to do that in our new Galilee. I'd like to make note that tonight many people were supposed to be baptized, initiated, received into this communion of faith. In our own community, Caitlin, Lisa, and Jay, who are supposed to be among us and experience the fullness of this grace of God. But to all those, to Caitlin, to Lisa, and Jay, I invite you to remember that Christ is calling you still today. Listen to his voice from the Sea of Galilee. Christ claims you as he claims all of us in the baptismal waters. And Christ is calling you, like all of us, to the newness, to the new Galilee, to live in his resurrection. My friends, I'll say it again, Alleluia.
Hallelujah.
Alleluia.
Hallelujah.
Let us go. Let us go to Galilee, led by Christ, the risen Redeemer, who nourishes us with his word, led by the Spirit of God, who heals us, led by the Father, who lifts us up. We go to the new Galilee. Alleluia.